Hey, James here for Read More Comics. The month of May was a busy month for me. Uh, in addition to the normal end of school year extravaganza, as things were moving through that month, I had work projects going on, I had home projects going on, some other things. Life kind of happened. And as a result, though I was going to my LCS, I had almost no motivation or time to read comic books. And there was a lot that month. So this gave me a moment to pause now that I'm in a point in the year where I have some time on my hands and I can think about this. Am I subscribing to too many comic books? Well, let's kind of explore that. So let's get all the nut and bolts out of the way. If you do like the content of this video, please like down below. You can subscribe, hit the bell up in the corner, and get notifications anytime I post new content. So as I was saying, the month of May was exceedingly busy. I did not have a chance to read any of my normal books, let alone all the back issue stories. And while things have begun to level out for me, and I'm able to get back into reading and get caught up on some of the titles that I got behind on, it also did give me a chance to think about, am I subscribing to too many books? Or more importantly, what is my motivation in subscribing to books? Now, before the pandemic, one thing I noticed was the influence social media was having on the orders or the books I was picking up. There was a lot of fear of missing out, FOMO, which maybe should be a topic of another video, that would motivate me to pick up certain titles because of maybe it was the writer, maybe it was the new hotness, maybe it was the art on the cover, a variant cover that was attracting a lot of attention. I remember that really early on, maybe 6-7 years ago. Archer, when he first came on the scene, he was everywhere, and he was the new hotness that everybody was going after in trying to collect his variant covers. So what I did is I kind of kept this all in a pile. I put it aside until I had time to think about, well, why am I getting the books I'm getting? Now, here's a caveat, and this is something I have learned as a collector. I've been collecting as an adult for about 14 years now. And in that time, there have been several moments where I would drop a title only to go back to it later on and try to pick up all the missing pieces. Okay, try to pick it up on the secondary market, pick it up in my LCS back issue bins, at half price books, on eBay, things like that. Because I ended up finding that I really did want that title to be a part of my collection. And as a collector, I'm kind of a completionist. So if I'm looking at a particular run, I want to make sure I have that entire run. That doesn't mean I need all the variant covers or something like that, but I need all the cover. I need all the issues for it, and I'm going to need the annuals for it. Okay, so putting that aside, I went through and I began sorting. In education, one of the things I've learned is you can use a sorting protocol to make quick judgments about a particular data set. And so I was sorting these, looking at, well, what are the commonalities between these different titles? Why am I collecting these books? Okay. And with a few exceptions, I found that everything went back to my interest in some way. Now, to be fair, I think as comic book collectors, our tastes kind of wax and wane based on where we are in our life. Some of these titles, maybe 10 years ago, I wouldn't be collecting, but now I am, and there's reasons for that. Okay, I've tried to put these not in an order of importance, but showing an order of influence. The first pile, and this is a very small subset of the books, all goes back to nostalgia. Okay. I have realized over the past few years, there are books that I'm pulling because it harkens back to a time when I first started reading comic books. really back in middle school. Back in the day when I'd mow some neighbor yards and then go down to the convenience store and pick them up off the spinner rack. Okay. Some of this is showing that influence, not exclusively, and there's going to be some overlap. Like the first title right here, Conan, is also connected to my next, I don't know what that was, my next motivation. Okay, so starting out, we have Conan the Barbarian. Now, my interest in this honestly goes back to the Arnold Schwarzenegger classic Conan the Barbarian and kind of Conan the Destroyer, but also all the paperbacks my dad would read. He was in the Navy. He'd pass them to me and I would read them. And so when I began being in a position to collect comic books in middle school, this is back in the 80s, Conan the Barbarian is where I started because it was approachable to me. I understood it. And so when I got back into collecting, I skipped Dark Horse. And it's only because I didn't know where to start. I didn't understand how Dark Horse organized the title, how they were presenting the title. But I did jump on when Marvel picked it up again. And Conan the Barbarian is one of the runs, his Marvel Volume 1 that I've been working on since I've been collecting as an adult. I had a good chunk of it for my days back in middle school, back in the 80s, and I'm building on that. So this is Conan the Barbarian. This is the new Titan comic imprint. And I'll be honest, it has that flavor. It's captured the flavor, in my opinion, of what was going on in Marvel's Volume 1 back in the 70s and 80s. The next one, this is a nostalgia pull for me. This one is Shazam. This goes back to not previous iterations of Shazam as a title, but when I was a kid back in the late 70s, I remember the live action series every Saturday morning. And that was something I enjoyed. I haven't seen it since then, and I'll be honest, I don't think it probably has held up really well. But because of that joy it brought me, when I saw Mark Waid picking up Shazam and Dan Mora, I picked it up. I added it to my pull list. I thoroughly enjoyed Jeff Johns. It was the backstory in Justice League during New 52. And everywhere that I've been able to see Shazam continuing, I've been picking it up. I even imagine, because it wouldn't be terribly difficult to do except some of the earliest issues, going backwards through at least the Bronze Age, maybe late Silver Age, and picking up Shazam titles because of what Shazam meant to me when I was a little kid. All right. And the new creative team is pretty good. Next up, we have the Thundercats. Now, I'm going to loop this in with G.I. Joe. For some reason, I don't have the issue of G.I. Joe from May in here. I know I pulled it. I think I read it. Anyway, G.I. Joe would be here. He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. I think there's a new mini called Revolution. That would be included in this. This goes all the way back to after-school cartoons and Saturday morning cartoons. Dungeons and Dragons, the cartoon, would be in here. So anything that's connected to those cartoons that I really enjoyed coming home from school in middle school or watching cartoons as a kid, these are titles that I'm starting to pull. What I've noticed is the creative teams of these books realize for the most part that their audience is individuals that grew up with these titles. And so they're not rehashing the stories. Like in the case of Thundercats, they're adding a more mature complexity to the story, which is engaging. By the way, definitely recommend Thundercats. It's been a really good story. Same with G.I. Joe. Larry Hama has been swinging for the fences on that one. Last one is going to be What If Aliens? Okay. I know that Marvel picked up Aliens and Predator, and both of those were movies. I remember seeing both of these when I was in middle school, I think 7th grade, 8th grade, something like that. I know I'm giving away how old I am right there. And I'm not pulling those, but Carter Burke right here, this character, he really hooked me in the Aliens movie. And so when I saw this was coming out, I had to add it to my pull list. Now, also as an aside, while I'm not getting the new stuff that Marvel's turning out, I am collecting I am subscribing to the trades that they're coming out with that's republishing all the Aliens and Predator stories. I'm not doing the Predator stories because they did really connect with me. I enjoy Predator. Arnold was amazing. But it's more of the Alien stories because Aliens was the bomb when it came out. Okay, so this next subset is going to be related to this. As I was growing up, one of the things that my parents did, especially my father, is he instilled a love of fantasy and science fiction. We would watch movies Saturday afternoon. I remember watching Mad Max, Conan the Barbarian, all of those movies from the 70s and 80s. And then as a parent, I did the same thing with my own children. And when it comes to a comic book reader, those two joys, which is connected to some of the nostalgia, but those two joys are things that do affect what I'm reading and what I'm going to subscribe to. The first one is Red Sonja. I know it's coming out of my enjoyment of Conan the Barbarian. I remember the Bridget Nielsen movie, Red Sonja. It was really, really bad, but I loved it when it came out, even if it hasn't aged too well. Red Sonja has been a lot of fun. These next two are just science fiction that sticks out for me. Rook Exodus, great sci-fi tale, great dystopia tale, really kind of connects with my enjoyment of the Borderlands franchise, kind of has that feel to it. And then years ago in New Comic Book Day, Valiant put out an Exo Man-O-War New Comic Book Day book. I picked it up. It was amazing because it connected two passions I have. One, science fiction, but I'm a history teacher. And Eric of Dacia is right up my alley. And by the way, the current creative team, Becky Cloonan, has been knocking it out of the park. Let's see, this is Invictus. The one before it, I don't remember what it is, but it has like this space Roman Empire. It's been killer. Okay. Highly recommend both of these books. The next one goes all the way back to the late 1970s. I remember the first Hasbro Star Wars toy commercials when A New Hope came out. I remember everybody on the block getting those action figures. Unfortunately, and times are different now. It would be a while before anybody would get vehicles because those were expensive. Those were like, they weren't even birthday presents back in the day. Those were like the Christmas present, you know, if you got the TIE fighter or the X-Wing fighter. Anyway, so Star Wars, and this all goes back to that. It's connected to nostalgia, but it really is that passion for science fiction that my dad imbued in me. And I know I've done the same thing in my son and my daughter. Next up, let's kind of pull these out. There we go. Are characters that really have hooked my attention. Now, this is going to be influenced by that love of science fiction, that love of fantasy, that nostalgia motivation, that it's connecting to something in my youth. And at least for the first three books, it's really not a nostalgia thing because there are titles that are closer to what I remember in my youth that I totally ignored because it wasn't what I wanted to read as an adult reader. This is going to be characters. Okay. The character that got me into collecting as an adult was Batman. I loved Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy. It was totally different than Batman 66. In fact, so much so, even though Marvel turned out a Batman 66, even though they've turned out a Batman 89, and I remember the Batman 66 show when I was a kid. It was in reruns at that point. I loved Batman 89 when it came out, but it was Christopher Nolan's Batman that made me want to read comic books as an adult. And so we have these three titles for this. Batman, while if I look at my CLZ, it is not my Batman comics, my Batman collection is not the comic book title that I have the most of. In fact, I have a little bit more Marvel than DC, even though I see myself more of a DC fan. But if you look at the characters, Batman's number one. Alfred Pennyworth is number 2, interestingly enough. So we have Zdarsky's run right now in Batman. Put this over here. It's been great. Batman and Robin by Williamson. Really enjoyed this. And then I just added to my pull list the Boy Wonder Black Label book, which I know isn't in continuity, but it's been a lot of fun too. There's a very different feel to this, and I can't place it. Next up, we have Fantastic Four. I got into Fantastic Four through following Dan Slott. He's one of the writers that I enjoy. I was reading him on Silver Surfer, then he went over to Fantastic Four. Enjoyed his work, but I continued after he left. And Ryan North right now is killing it. I also, and while I don't spec, like I don't sell books in my collection. Typically, if I have extras, I put them to the side. I give some of the titles that I'm no longer interested in to some neighbors, or there was even a few times when I had a short box and I was giving them away during Halloween to trick-or-treaters, you know, kept it age appropriate, of course. Well, Fantastic Four was one of those titles that I saw. I was reading the tea leaves. No one was collecting 5, 6, 7 years ago in the comic book groups I was in on Facebook, even when they were showing up frequently in some of the auctions that were occurring in some of the Facebook groups. No one was picking them up. So I started picking them up because I'm like, well, you know, I think this will add value to my collection. And I sincerely think it has. But I also have learned to enjoy it. While I do remember the really badly, and you know, I mean, for the time, it was what it was, but the animation hasn't aged well. I remember the Fantastic Four series. I think it was in the late 60s. I was a little kid. They were showing it in reruns. I think it was during, maybe it was Saturday mornings. I don't remember where it was. I just remember the one episode where, this is an aside, so if you want to like skip ahead a little bit, totally can. There was an episode where Magneto had captured the Fantastic Four, and Reed Richards had made a gun out of wood. I remember that. That would never show up in a cartoon now, but that's what he did, and it like broke Magneto's brain. Anyway, the Ryan North run on Fantastic Four is amazing. We're on issue number 21. If you're looking at getting into Fantastic Four, I'd wait until the Blood Hunt event's over, because that's when it's going to pick up with whatever story's happening next. What Ryan North has been doing a really good job with, in my opinion, while there's been some overarching stories, most of these are very episodic issues. Like there's something happening just in an issue, and then something new's happening in the next one, and something new's happening in the next one. There's been a few that have been 1 or 2 issues long, or maybe 2 issues long, and there has been an overarching story kind of going in the background. So definitely recommend picking up this. The next one, and these are going to be connected together. These are Spider-Man. Now, again, if I'm looking at nostalgia, I remember on Electra Company, they had Spider-Man cartoons. It was amazing. The animation hasn't held up, but it was great for the time, right? And while Peter Parker and some of the other Spider-Man runs, Amazing Spider-Man, Web of Spider-Man, etc., haven't really attracted my attention. And this is where, as an adult collector, I think stepping into Amazing Spider-Man or just the Spider-Man title is intimidating because it has such a catalog of lore, of canon, that as a neophyte reader of Spider-Man, I wouldn't know where to start. Okay. Until what was it? Into the Spider-Verse movie. Went to see that with my grandsons. Blew my mind. Got into Miles Morales. That led me to Edge of Spider-Verse. I love these because they're anthologies. They're kind of one and done, but they introduce a bunch of new Spider characters. And they're fun stories. And then last, Ultimate Spider-Man. Because I got into Miles Morales, I felt the need to go back and collect. This is the completionist in me. Every one of his his titled appearances, and then because I know he was a part of the Ultimate Universe, well, I wanted the Ultimate Spider-Man before him, the Volume 1 and Volume 2 runs with Peter Parker, which when Jonathan Hickman, when it was announced he was going to be writing a Spider-Man book, this was a no-brainer. I went for it. Okay, so Spider-Man has had a place. It's a character I'm following, but very specific Spider-Man. I'm not going to pull Amazing Spider-Man. I'm not going to go for Spider-Man 2099 or any of those because those don't interest me. But the books that have a connection with Miles Morales or the Ultimate Universe, I've been going for. Okay, next up is going to be authors. I'm sorry, creative teams, specifically the writer. But I have found with certain artists, I'll follow them along, especially if they're connected to a particular writer. Okay, I'm going to kind of group these into two different groups. Okay, so the first one's going to be Ram V. I loved his run on Justice League Dark. I loved his Swamp Thing mini. Was it a maxi series? It became a maxi series when I found out that he was going to be doing a kind of a creator-owned title. I don't know if as it's a part of Dark Horse if he owns it. Anyway, where it had mecha and kaiju. I said, yeah, okay, because I love sci-fi. I know he was doing detective, and you'll notice I don't pull detective, and that's because detective has more than 1,000 issues, and the completionist in me would want to go back and get as many of those as possible, which just wouldn't be doable with the resources I've had. So Ram V is one of those writers that I kind of keep an eye on. And if it's something that connects to other things, other titles, or other motivations like sci-fi, fantasy, or nostalgia, I'll pull it. The next one is Peter Tomasi. I loved what he did with Superman Rebirth. Loved what he did with Super Sons. Okay. When Sinister Sons was announced, I thought this would be like Super Sons. And this is kind of off the rails fun. It's not going to be like Super Sons though. I'll be surprised. We'll see what Tomasi does with it. But I don't think he's going to end this. But Peter Tomasi is one of the writers that I look for. And if it's connected to characters that I'm going to follow, or I'd want to follow, I'm going to pull it. The last is Tom King. And currently I have 2 books on my pull list that he's doing. The first one's Penguin. Because it's connected to Batman, this was an easy pull, an easy add to my pull list. And this one's just about done. I think there's only going to be 12 issues in this. So this is a maxi series. The other one is Wonder Woman. Now, Wonder Woman, I had been pulling the last volume beginning with Rucka's run at the beginning of Wonder Woman Rebirth. And because of my completionist nature, though the title struggled at times, I didn't find a logical off-ramp until the end of the volume when it was announced Tom King was going to be writing. And I love Tom King's run on Batman. I added this to my pull list. So creative teams, writers are something I'm going to look for. I don't know if you've heard it in the background. My dog keeps moving around. She's trying to get comfortable right now. The next motivation, and there aren't a lot of more adult titles that connect with this, or more mature titles, is animals. I'm a dog person and a cat person. I currently don't have a cat, but I have a dog. She's sitting right over there looking out the window. Okay. And so when I find titles that are written well, or they have an amazing creative team, or it just piques my interest in some way, and it's cats or dogs, I'm going to pull it. It was on hiatus when this month came out. It was, it's not Animal Farm. It's an homage to Animal Farm. Tom King's, drawing a blank. He's doing a dog and cat book right now. I'll remember it later. Anyway, so we got Feral. I pulled this because I love Stray Dogs. And I've been going back trying to get the individual issues of Stray Dogs. I read Stray Dogs first as a trade. What I've heard, Feral's going to be an ongoing issue. And I'm going to be honest, this is issue number 4. Oh, issue 3. I haven't read any of these yet. But I know I'm going to love it because it's Tony Fleegs. Okay. And Trish Forstner. And they killed it on Stray Dogs. I've been pulling the horror homage covers. The other one is Man's Best, which connects to my love of sci-fi. Just love the concept. The art on the covers kills it. I'm behind on this one too. Only heard good things about this. But because we're dealing with cats and dogs, these are on my pulls. I'm still drawing a blank on the Tom King title. I'll get back to it. And then last, there are a few books. If I was going to look anywhere, where are some books that I could trim off my pull list? A lot of the other books I've covered, if it's a mini or maxi series, I'll go all the way to the end because of my completionist priorities. I have to have the whole volume. But if it's an ongoing, that's where it becomes more complicated. I try to support my LCS. They will oftentimes have exclusive covers. And so when they do, and since the pandemic, a lot of the DC exclusive covers have been those team covers where a few LCSs will have access to a particular one. Well, they had one for Poison Ivy to support my LCS. I picked it up, I read it, and it was amazing. G. Willow Wilson is killing it on this title. Poison Ivy would not have been a character I would have pulled on my own, but this title is amazing. Okay, if you're not reading Poison Ivy, I highly recommend it. At best, I wouldn't even say she's a villain per se. I think she's definitely an extremist in her views, which causes her to make some choices that other people might not do. But the motivation for why she's doing it comes from a place that isn't necessarily evil or villainous, like you might see for the Joker. Okay. But Poison Ivy started with that issue, supporting my LCS. Since then, I've been pulling it because it's just been an amazing story. The next one is, and these two, unlike everything else that I've shared, which has been something I'm subbing to, I'm going to be pulling these every month as long as the title is continuing. These two were pre-orders. They're not something that I was subbed to. The first one is Marvel Voices Pride. This is the X-Men wedding special that Marvel made into their Pride month issue. Okay, I pulled this for two reasons. One, and I've noticed this with some other titles, the wedding issues I end up pulling. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I'm married. Anyway, so I pulled this. And I pre-ordered this, also pre-ordered DC Pride 2024. Both of these, honestly, I'm pulling these because as a school teacher, I see students that would connect to these stories in a way that I would not. But as students, they don't have the resources I do to necessarily pick up comic books. It's not like it was back in the day where I would walk down to the corner mart and pick up books off the spinner rack, 5 minutes from my house. My LCS is on a busy road in a shopping district. There's nobody living around for, 30, 45 minutes walking, at least, maybe even more than that. Okay. And some of the places you'd have to go to get there, there's no sidewalks. Okay. So it's very different. When I was buying comic books as a kid off the spinner rack, they were $1 a piece. This one, and I knew it, this is This is a special issue because of who's involved. $10 book. This one right here, I got to give credit to DC when they do anthology books like this. They're square bound. There's a lot of content in here. There's going to be multiple stories. $10 book. Okay. So I'm getting these because honestly, by doing this, this is showing these companies that these types of stories are going to matter to someone, even if it doesn't connect with me. So thank you for listening to me as I rambled and walked through what has motivated me to subscribe to what is a healthy stack of comics. I think I counted it beforehand. I got about 28 polls going on. There's actually more than that because I'm missing a couple books. So it's a little north of 30 books I poll each month. If you liked what you heard today, please like, share, and subscribe. Hit the bell in the corner so that way when I publish new content, you're going to be able to see it. And I just want to thank you for listening to me ramble on about this. And don't forget to read more comics.